I have genuinely good memories of the WWF in 1998. That was the year Steve Austin became the World Heavyweight Champion, don't forget. Stone Cold Steve Austin may not like that match, but man, it was everything when I was a fetus. You could also feel the World Wrestling Federation on the cusp of something big when bam, they did take off, and for a good while they never looked back. So what do we learn by binge-watching Raw from that year? Well, I am Simon Miller the Nerd, and I have done this so you don't have to. Number 10, nobody can see because of the signs. I mean, it really is an amazing sight. Even though in the modern day we're definitely on the increase, nothing compares to this. I did some research, and surely that's what Sinead O'Connor was singing about. It's why new fans see this sea of cardboard and wonder, well, how could anybody actually watch the wrestling? Well, the answer is it was pretty hard, and you can find the odd report from this era. A lot of individuals kept yelling, "Put down the sign!" They were told no. What's mad is that by the summer of 1998, it got even worse, or better, depending on how you look at it. There's just so many of them. And yes, a lot are offensive. It really does add to the excitement and energy, even if it's just the audience wanting to get on camera, because they are jumping and going nuts. It's quite the experience. I think even if it did take off again today, it would have to be managed a bit better. Ticket prices are too much, and I get it. You'd be well within your rights to be furious when all you watched is a piece of paper. Number 9, the matches are weird, because this ain't what we do in 2025. Raw was most definitely a television show to push forward stories mostly, so often the wrestling part played second fiddle. Say hello to Vince Russo, ladies and gentlemen. When you go through all 52 episodes, you'll be hard-pressed to remember any of them because they're just so fast. There's so many ridiculous finishes, there's so many run-ins. It's like watching wrestling and being spiked constantly with adrenaline. It always feels like WWE is just trying to navigate to the next promo skit. That does not mean it's not fun, and it is of its time, but if you do want to be a geek and compare and contrast, yes, today's version has been balanced way better. There were even times when I eye-rolled watching this. I don't need another no contest, mostly because I just seen 688 no contests. Number 8, apart from the March 23rd Raw. Now yes, this was the week of WrestleMania 14, so think of that. And even though Steve Austin was the number 1 contender for the world title, he had a match with The Rock. Talk about looking into the future. It only goes 10 minutes, but man, hold the phone. Instantly you can see this is the feud, and of course they had their Intercontinental title clashes the year prior. The WWF knew what they were doing. Here's a tease. Rocky is just selling everything too, which makes Austin look like a warrior, but you get it the other way around too. Just so well pitched for where we were and what we were trying to do. The real new generation. It is worth a watch from a novelty standpoint if nothing else, because it is 2 of the all-time greats clashing in a match that nobody remembers. It was also before Stone Cold would truly ascend to the heights that may never have been seen again. It is really cool. Number 7, Eric Bischoff was right. About Mike Tyson. Because yeah, before the WWF started chatting to Iron Mike, the rumor had always been that WCW had given him a call first. Either way, it doesn't actually matter. Mostly Eric had talked about the fact that when he sat down to check out his competition on the 19th of January 1998, he got worried. The Steve Austin Tyson segment was so good he knew WCW was f***ed. Excuse my language, but he was right. At the time, World Championship Wrestling couldn't get away with such TV as they'd been told to calm it down. But Vince McMahon had no such restrictions. He pushed the boat out. It got mainstream attention too, and let's not pretend otherwise. So many people saw this and fell in love with the Rattlesnake instantly. He was just such a badass, and he was taking on his boss. That was the late 90s American dream. Of course, Mike was involved all the way through to WrestleMania, which helped much in the same way Mr. T had for WrestleMania 1. This was an inspired touch. Number 6, the hardcore title. There's another reason all of that worked too, however. What was happening beneath the main event scene, and the wonderful work of Mick Foley. As the new version of Mankind, he was trying to help out Vince McMahon. He was just so entertaining. Basically thought Vince was his new dad, and McMahon did get that back to him. He granted Foley with a brand new hardcore title. Now within 28 days, this was thrown onto the Road Dogg, and yes, we did get the 24/7 rule, and it became a cornerstone of the Attitude Era. People loved it, as did I. The idea was so much fun. It's just wild it started with Mick, but didn't last more than a month. Feels like before sending it off into Crazy Land, we could have done a little bit more here. Foley was so good at making you care, even for this broken, falling apart piece of tin. The man was a master. It all still worked out, but this does tie in the speed in which we burn through things. It's almost as if there's no trust in the audience at all. Number 5, DX 2.0 was better, or at least less unhinged. I mean, they still broke the world constantly with exploits such as driving to a WCW show, but when you watch the Triple H, China, Shawn Michaels and Rick Rude version, That always feels like we're close to pushing the envelope way too far. It was a risky time. Obviously, they were iconic in their own way, but maybe the 2.0 version was just more fun. Still chopped their crotches a lot and shouted "suck it," but it felt like everybody benefited from this. Triple H went on to be a main eventer, the New Age Outlaws were a tag team staple, and X-Pac was the measuring stick for good wrestling. We all forget about that one. China too really exploded during this period, so I suppose it felt more like a group that had a very specific aim, and the OG version was just chaos on wheels. Now you can't have version 2 without version 1. It's still how I felt. Number 4, Stone Cold should not have lost that title. I mean, there was a reason for it. Kane beat Steve Austin at the 98 King of the Ring First Blood match so fans would freak out and tune into Raw. Stone Cold would then win the championship back 24 hours later, and ratings would be through the roof. Screw you, WCW. That's exactly what happened. It is, however, still ridiculous. Kane is fortunate he was such a monster because other wrestlers wouldn't have been so lucky. He basically just shrugged this off. And really, Austin could have held the title for the entire year and it would have been fine. People love this guy. Counterpoint to that is the same logic though. The rattlesnake was bulletproof, so even if he had lost to a llama, nobody would have cared. We just wanted to see him kick somebody's ass. Dare I say it, but he may have been bigger than the WWF title. It was mostly done because the Big Red Machine was awesome in mid-98, so he needed a spotlight like this, but it was never going to take over Austin. So I do get it. Maybe there was just another way to pull it off. Number 3, Kane in general. Do not forget that when Glenn Jacobs was asked to put on a mask and be The Undertaker's brother, this was only meant to be a short run. He'd feud with the dead man through to WrestleMania 14 and that would be that. Thankfully he did get mega over and management kept him around. It did mean we didn't have a longer term plan, and don't forget, despite trying to kill Taker at Bad Blood 1997, by January he was helping him fight off Degeneration X. It was a ruse of course, and he turned on his sibling again, but it felt like his motivations were all over the place. It was later on in 98 when I think the powers that be realised booking Kane was hard, because in October, The Undertaker turned on him and rejoined Paul Bearer, even though Bearer had also tried to murder The Undertaker earlier in the year. I mean, he'd also lied about his own damn family. And yes, all of this is super fun, but let's not pretend otherwise. It's 2 + 2 = potato, and it absolutely makes no sense. That's why I give them even more credit though, I suppose. They still do make it very, very entertaining. Number 2, the gun. So this was crazy risky. We don't talk about it enough, and if you watch my Ups and Downs series, my gosh, this would have destroyed the crime counter. But on the 19th of October, Raw, Stone Cold Steve Austin was so done with Vincent Kennedy McMahon, he kidnapped him at gunpoint. That's right. I suppose in its own way it was a callback to the super controversial angle between Austin and Brian Pillman, but the WWF almost got kicked off air for doing that. The USA Network were furious. That was 1996 though, and 2 years on the landscape was so different. Apparently it was good to go again, but still. Stone Cold basically said he was going to kill Vince to the point McMahon pissed his pants. Yep. Of course the punchline was it was a toy gun, and when Steve pulled the trigger, a banner popped out the barrel that read Bang 316. It means when you watch it after the fact, it is fine because you know it's a joke, but let's not forget a bunch of kids were seeing this and had no idea. Imagine your mum and dad walked in. This really does get quite dark. There was no fallout to be fair, and this image you can see on the screen now became iconic. Fans even had it as a poster on their bedroom. That's why wrestling will never make any sense. Number 1, Austin versus McMahon should have been done at SummerSlam. So as a nerd, I can tell you, people were talking about this back then too. When you do your research, all the behind-the-scene newsletters were hinting that Steve Austin versus Vince McMahon was going to be the SummerSlam 1998 main event. It was not. It was all off the back of their first match on the 13th of April Raw, where of course Mick Foley became Dude Love and screwed it all up. Super smart, all things considered. Austin needed to rewrite the WWF main event style, and as he wanted to brawl all over the place, Foley was the perfect opponent. The summer pay-per-view was also booked for Madison Square Garden, which felt perfect when we pivot to Stone Cold versus The Undertaker instead. It is important to underline the WWF did a good job in making the dead man feel like a threat, but still, when you watch it week to week, it does come out of nowhere. I mean, Austin versus Taker was babyface versus babyface. Fans didn't really want to see that. Even more bizarrely, the company would hold off to February 1999 before they had their first proper fight, and maybe that ties in. I'm sure there was a worry that as soon as Steve had wrecked McMahon in an official match, the feud would come to a natural end, but there would have been ways and means. Either way, it had the momentum to be the top of SummerSlam, It just never happens. Know of any other crazy stuff you noticed from binge-watching Raw in 1998? Drop me a comment below when you can click the video on the screen where we did binge-watch 2001 Raw. You can get all the information. You can also engage with this video by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Otherwise, my friends, I appreciate you and hope you're having a great day. And I will talk to you again soon.